Darkenstein 3D is a whole lot of silly. Developed by Rowye and published by the revived Microprose, Darkenstein 3D is a goofy parody of the famed Wolfenstein series, as well as classic first-person shooters broadly. Set during World War II, you step into the beer-soaked shoes of the Hobo Guy, an inebriated man with a magnificent beard and a lust for pie, on a quest to rescue his dog from the vile Nazi scum. Since its release last October, Darkenstein has become a favorite among boomer shooter fanatics, and today I'm finally throwing in my 2 cents on it. Now, a big thing to keep in mind about Darkenstein is that it's entirely free. Free as the air you breathe. You can go download it now, no strings attached, no nonsense. Which makes reviewing it a little weird because the purpose of a review is to inform you if a product is worth your money. And since Darkenstein is free, my opinion honestly doesn't matter much. If you want to play this, then go play it. There's no risk and no judgment because who cares, it's your free time. But I still wanted to make some content on it because I do find Darkenstein fun and valuable to discuss. I'll be real honest, I don't think it's a particularly good game. I do have a lot of criticisms, but there are some qualities I really appreciate about it, and a spirit to it that I value within the boom shoot scene, and want to support. I should also add it's the developer's first game born from him teaching himself game development, which I respect immensely. So while this video may not sway you one way or another to make a few non-consequential clicks on Steam, my hope is that it can offer some decent feedback to the developer, who I believe is still making improvements to this, and above all else, lend some entertainment to those on their lunch break or trying to fall asleep. So with that, let's load up on some cheese and brews and get psyched for Darkenstein 3D.
Rest in piss.
Darkenstein 3D is old-school shooter through and through. You are charging beard first through loopy maze-like levels, collecting keys and flipping switches to complete them, painting the walls red with whoever is unlucky to stand in your way. The game uses a live system where upon biting the dust, you return to a number of fairly placed fixed checkpoints. It's largely enjoyable, however, the gameplay is pretty uneven and unpolished. Plenty of strengths, plenty of flaws. Mechanically, it is solid. It has a tight, fast feel ideal for this style of old-school shooter, and the shooting itself is mostly good with a decent arsenal. We'll touch on those in a bit. What lets down the combat, though, is the spongy enemies and their damage reactions, which are underwhelming and inconsistent. Many of the enemies can soak up bullets, and while they might stagger a bit, often they were able to muscle through them and still be able to shoot me despite being actively plugged with lead, which on top of being annoying, undermines the satisfaction of the shooting and the power of the arsenal. The arsenal is mostly fun, the shotgun is right on the money, as is the futuristic crossbow. Yes, it is futuristic, trust me on that, lending some joyful distance splatting. The SMG will feel right at home to those who grew up on World War II classics like Medal of Honor and Return to Castle Wolfenstein, as well as the beefy bazooka. The magnificent minigun will turn enemies to goo just how you like it, and the flamethrower ain't half bad either. A letdown, though, was the pistol, which felt too weak and shot a bit too slow for my taste, as well as the electric skull, which is fun to use but lacked the power I wanted from it, requiring a lot of juice to really feel effective. The Tesla gun was also a bummer in that it often felt janky and inconsistent. When fired, it automatically locks onto enemies with electricity, frying them in a way that is satisfying, but there were times it just plain didn't work, either not locking onto them properly or suddenly shorting out. It just didn't feel reliable. You do have some fun throwables, though. Classic grenades, which were often a go-to for stubborn clusters of enemies,
Kick-ass.
as well as landmines, which indeed are great for traps, but I like to think of them as explosive frisbees.
Sit down and shut up.
The highlight, though, is the rat. Yes, you heard that right. A throwable rodent that will gnaw on a Nazi's face, opening them up for attack. Very dumb, but oh so fun. Oh, I can't forget rant mode, which is a highlight. Dispatching enemies will slowly fill up your blue rant meter, and when full, you can enter a homicidal rant mode, which is as ridiculous and fun as it sounds. Basically, everything goes into slow-mo, your ammo counts become unlimited, and you are free, for a short time, to demolish all before you with an Unreal Tournament-esque announcer cheering on your combos.
You're a machine. Killing machine. Homicidal rant.
It's nothing new, but certainly a silly, simple pleasure. There's no jumping in the game, which was a bit of a surprise, although the spacebar is reserved for a good old-fashioned mighty boot kick, which was enjoyable. There's also no dash mechanic, which isn't necessary for a game aiming for an old-school feel, but I was missing that sort of thing due to how aggressive and bullet-hellish the enemy attacks can be. Circle strafes are definitely your friend here, assuming you have the space for them. I need to touch on the flashlight mechanic because it's kind of a head-scratcher. You start the game off with one, but it can only be used with the pistol, as you'll need both hands for your other weapons. Which is fine, that makes sense. But then in the very next level, literally map 2, you can find a secret godlike flashlight that can be used with all the weapons. And I don't feel like I'm spoiling anything here because this is a very easy secret to find. And I can't help but wonder why this was a secret in general, because with how dark most of these levels are, the flashlight is pretty essential. The godlike flashlight does lose power over time, I assume to balance it out, and if all the juice runs out, it goes into a cooldown period as a penalty. However, if you just turn off the flashlight and turn it back on before it drains, it completely recharges instantly, undermining this mechanic entirely. And I suppose I can't help but wonder why all of this flashlight rigmarole was necessary in the first place. Why not just have an unlimited flashlight for the player right from the get-go that can be used with all the weapons? It kind of feels like the dev was trying to go for a Doom 3-esque sort of flashlight to gun swapping interplay, but perhaps overthought it and maybe second thought it. I don't know, but this really should have been simplified. Some of the enemies I felt were plain unfun to fight and underwhelming in their design. Early on, you take on skeleton warriors, and a clear nod to the undead enemies of Return to Castle Wolfenstein, who sport shields that will deflect all of your shots. The only way to dispatch them is to shoot their heads, which are peeking out at the top. A small target to hit for sure. However, their slow movements and melee-only attacks make them pretty easy to take out, even with a modest amount of distance. They have zero reactions to damage and soak up a decent amount of ammo, offering little to combat other than being a boring, spongy nuisance to fight. Then there are the female Nazis, another call out to a similar enemy type from Return to Wolf, and I think taking a page from the assassins from Half-Life, due to their caffeinated, superhuman movement. While their speed can make them tricky to hit, like other enemies, they are let down by how spongy and non-reactive they are to damage. Also doesn't help that these are easily the most bugged enemies in the game, often clipping through geometry as well as getting stuck on it. So even if you have a hard time hitting them, you can count on their bugginess helping you out. But the worst of them were the living suits of armor, who shoot out devastating ricochet projectiles and can summon lesser enemy types. What drove me nuts about them though is that they can only be damaged by shooting a small jewel in the middle of their chest, which can be a tricky target to hit, leading to a lot of wasted ammo in early encounters. And apparently it's immune to rocket fire. In all fairness, you gain weapons later on that are well suited to dispatching them, and as my skill improved, I was able to put them down efficiently with the shotgun. But overall, their annoyingly small damage box just makes them an unenjoyable enemy to fight, and they absolutely ground the pace of the game to a halt with every encounter. While we're on the subject of enemies, their AI is questionable to say the least. There are times when the enemies are actually quite smart, maybe a little too smart, magically able to predict your exact location and shoot you with absolute accuracy upon opening a door or rounding a corner, which can make the early cramped corridor maps a headache. Sometimes they are wise enough to jump out of the way of a grenade, and other times they are utterly brain dead, completely unaware of your presence. One thing that cracked me up is after aggroing an enemy, they will know exactly where you are on the map no matter what. So if you happen to die and restart at a checkpoint, you can guarantee that the enemies that just killed you are heading right towards you. Oh gee, isn't that great? Visually, the way Darkenstein hit me is that it's trying to be a mixture of the old-school aesthetics of Wolfenstein 3D with the Quake 3 powered vibes of its sequel, Return to Castle Wolfenstein. What I mean is that the environments are blocky with pixelated textures hearkening to the dungeons of Wolf 3D, with the polygonally plentiful enemies and weapons of RTCW. If the intention was indeed to strike a balance between the two generational Wolf classics, then I have to say it's a good concept that I can get behind. But unfortunately, the execution leaves something to be desired. The environments, especially in the early levels, just look unattractive. While I can appreciate the boxy old school vibes, the textures are just bad and not really hitting the retro notes they're going for. They look muddy and blurred, as if they were low resolution assets that lost fidelity because they were scaled up too much. In fact, yeah, I think that's exactly what happened here. And in general, environments just have a plasticky, cheap look to them, which may be more because of the engine it uses, Unity. Now, perhaps all of this was intentional to go along with the tongue-in-cheek nature of the game. Perhaps it's a symptom of the limited resources for a free release like this. Perhaps it's just been too long since I looked at a game made in Unity. Whatever the reason, doesn't change the fact that it just doesn't look good. I also really wish the enemies had more of an old-school blocky appearance in the vein of something like Quake, because their smoother, more rounded, and to be honest, generic appearances when contrasted against the blocky retro environment just makes everything visually clash more, and adds to the overall cheap and shoddy feel of the visuals. Earlier I talked about the flashlight and how essential it was. Well, the reason for that is because the game is overly dark and poorly lit throughout. Now, to be fair, the darkness of the game, especially in the early levels, is there to create a spookier atmosphere. And that's all good, but even in maps that were supposed to be brightly lit, I just plain had a hard time seeing stuff and was constantly flipping the flashlight on, and it really came off sloppy more than anything. Making this worse is the fact that enemies tend to blend in with the environment, making them even harder to see without the flashlight on. Yes, I turned my brightness up in the settings, but even that didn't help all that much. The performance was pretty shoddy too. The game was a hitch fest throughout, with some sections bafflingly stuttery, and whenever there was a lighting effect, particle effect, or some kind of explosion, like from my bazooka, you could count on the game hitching and stuttering. And there were some baffling bugs, like enemies clipping through walls and assets, and this weird one where my arrows were getting stuck in this bunker opening. Although, to be fair, the developer is currently working on a patch to address the performance issues and bugs, so hopefully most of this will be addressed soon.
A portable meat grinder. Man, this
So obviously, I just threw a big old ball of criticisms right at this game's face. However, despite the many flaws, I didn't hate Darkenstein 3D. In fact, I ultimately came to enjoy my time with it, as there were a few aspects that won me over, helped by the fact that the game is again free. The first is that I feel the game genuinely got better as I progressed. In my opinion, it starts with its worst maps, the frustrating, dark, cramped corridors where it's too easy for the bullet sponge enemies to cheap shot you. But as you progress, the maps get more complex, they open up more, and allow more room to fight. In some cases, too much room to the point that it kills the difficulty, but preferable to the cramped hallways. There's more verticality, making the fights more interesting, and they also feel more complementary to the arsenal you gain, in particular the long-ranged weapons. And ultimately, the latter maps, the final handful of maps in particular, were among my favorite of the whole game, and I was having an honest-to-God good time with them. They were perhaps a bit on the convoluted side, I did get a little lost, but were not frustrating to explore. This goes for the visuals too. The latter maps were the best looking in the game. They still didn't look amazing, but they were far superior to the early bland looking dungeons, and the lighting was far better all around, finally putting my overused flashlight to rest. Truly, I was starting to finally see the light of this game. However, the final boss map was a bummer, largely due to bugs. One that soft-locked me and forced me to restart from a checkpoint, another that made the final boss able to clip through walls and shoot through them, which was about as irritating as it gets. But overall, while I wish the game didn't start off as a shaky, trippy jog, it was nice to have it turn into a solid, steady sprint. So if you're like me and find the early maps to be pretty meh, just hang in there.
Stay away from my pie.
The other aspect that I think is the key central quality of what has made this game a favorite among Boom Shoot fans is just how damn silly it is. Darkenstein 3D is a stupid game, and I say that with the utmost respect. To me, it's the airplane or scary movie of first-person shooters, a parody of the genre that goes for nothing but pure silly, and that you can tell was made by people who absolutely love these sorts of games. From the moment it starts to the end credits, it's just trying to make you laugh. And for me, who loves silliness in all forms, it's hard for me not to love that.
The undead are living the big life down here. Can't believe I'm getting jealous of dead men.
And look, not every joke was a home run. There were some moments where it was trying a little too hard for laughs to the point of cringe, but the absurd atmosphere of it all is what made Darkenstein instantly charming and what kept me engaged throughout. The main character, for instance, is just so wonderfully ridiculous. He's a drunk hobo who is trying to get his kidnapped dog back from Nazis. And while his name is just the Hobo Guy, whenever he chats with an NPC, he refers to himself as a garbled, misspelled version of B.J. Blazkowicz, the hero of Wolfenstein, of course, that he keeps changing.
I'm John Jankowitz, renowned bounty hunter. I lost my dog.
Who the hell are you?
I'm General C.J. Drankowitz. Who cares?
Not to mention feeding dying soldiers bits of his pie in a futile attempt to help them.
Thank you, sir. Would you like some pie as a token of my thanks? Off with you.
One of my favorite moments is when you meet the rat, who is shocked and freaked out that a hobo is able to speak to him. And he's like, "Yep, I'm a man of many talents."
Hey, I'm a man of many talents.
It's so dumb, but I love it. Also, any game that references the Prodigy will earn points from me.
I'm a fire starter, twisted fire starter.
Darkenstein has a lot of problems, but its sense of humor made me forgive some of them and soften up on others, on top of the fact that it's free. And for me, it hits at one of my favorite qualities of the boomer shooter scene, in that it's a community that does have a great sense of humor and doesn't take things too seriously.
Just the way Corporal P.J. Krankowitz likes it. Here, have some pie.
Anyways, to wrap this all up, yeah, if this game had a price tag, I would have a hard time recommending it. And those who have very high standards for their first-person shooters and aren't into humor in their games should probably avoid this like the plague. But because it's free, offers some fun gameplay, and has a sense of humor, then I would say those who love boomer shooters, can overlook some flaws, and like to giggle should check this out. Again, like a broken record, it's free. What's the risk? Also, to be frank, this game has more quality to it than a lot of indie shooters that do have a price tag. But anyways, that's all for my homicidal rants. What are your thoughts on Darkenstein 3D? Be sure to let me know down in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to like, subscribe, share, and smack that bell. It's a huge help for the algorithm and getting my videos seen by more people. If you want to join my Discord, the link is down below, along with my affiliate links. I'm Kirk, and thank you for watching this video. Stay safe out there.